The following is a Sports Ethos presentation. Yo, and welcome to another episode of Roundball Ramble. I am your host, Corbin Ford. You can follow me on Twitter at CorbinNBA. Like the intro says, this is a Sports Ethos presentation, so check out Sports Ethos online at sportsethos.com, on Twitter. Pretty simple, at Sports Ethos. Get everything you want from a fantasy basketball perspective, but not only that, they have the gambling side coverage. You have baseball, you have football, you have the general NBA, such as this show from yours truly. Got the WNBA, got the front office side. A lot is covered on Sports Ethos, so definitely make sure to check them out one more time on Twitter at Sports Ethos, online, sportsethos.com. Alright, y'all, so as y'all know, I tell you all the time, follow me on Twitter at CorbinNBA. Check out my stuff there. I have another show that I also do in addition to Roundball Ramble. It's called Let's Make Moves. I'm sure you've heard of it before. I've referred to it on this show before. It is a podcast with the Lead Sports Media. Check them out on Twitter at TheLeadSM, online, TheLeadSM.com. And it is literally just about basketball from the front office side. Not so much current events. We've been doing a more of a historical deep dive on some executives with friend of the show, Josh Earl. You've heard him on this show before. We actually just did one on Isaiah Thomas and his Knicks tenure. We're going to be doing one on Joe Dumars and his Pistons tenure as well. But the reason I'm sharing all this information is because it is indeed relevant. I did a mock draft of the 2022 NBA draft through the lottery with Fanspo. Definitely a great resource. Check them out. Fanspo.com. You remember them from Fun Trade Fridays we used to do. We're going to get back to doing soon. But in addition to having the trade machine, the cat manager, they have a draft big board creator and a mock draft simulator as well. Big stuff. Great stuff. And, I have really been having something with a mock draft simulator. And so I went and drafted the entire lottery for this draft according to the ESPN big board and the needs that these teams may have. I think it's a very interesting thought exercise to see what teams have positions of need, whether the players in this draft class can fit those, whether I'm reaching too early to grab somebody off the board, whether someone's waiting way later in the board that would have been grabbed much earlier in real life. I think it's a lot of fun to kind of have these sort of thought processes, these thought exercises, if you will. And so I was glad to have done that for Let's Make Moves, and I want to share that episode here. So in a minute, you'll be hearing me go through the lottery of the 2022 NBA draft. We're going to be doing some more draft content on this show. I already had Richard Liu on here before, about a month ago. I'm going to have some more draft guests coming on here as well. So don't worry, there'll be a lot more draft content on this podcast as we get closer and closer to the draft. But I figured, hey, let's, a little bit of content here. Let's start a conversation, have some fun with it. Let's do some thinking. I'm definitely not a draft expert at all. I find myself following the draft once it becomes closer to NBA draft time, because that's when my mind starts gearing to the league and how these prospects may go. I don't consider myself a draft evaluator of the likes of Upside Swings podcast, or, there's plenty of other great ones out there that are really, really good at this stuff. But I do think of myself as a general basketball fan and someone who's knowledgeable on at least team needs and team fits and player profiles, and so I thought that was a really fun idea to do, and I'm glad I did it, and I'll be doing more of this on the future here on the show. But anyway, I'm doing, as the pod says, rambling on and on, so I'm going to let you go now. You will be hearing, again, Let's Make Moves, the 2022 NBA mock draft for the lottery. So definitely make sure to check that out, enjoy it. Any feedback, please rate, review, subscribe to Roundball Ramble, also to Let's Make Moves. If you have any direct feedback, I am all ears, or all eyes as I'll read it. So definitely make sure to reach out to me on Twitter at CorbinNBA. I really appreciate that. So definitely do that as well. Until next time, y'all, because I didn't sign off this way on the show, I am Frosty. Y'all stay frosty. And after this episode, I'll talk to y'all real soon. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Make Moves. I'm your host, Corbin Ford. You can follow me on Twitter at CorbinNBA. This episode, or this podcast, rather, is part of the Lead Sports Media Podcast Network. So, check out the Lead on Twitter at TheLeadSM. Online, simple, at TheLeadSM.com. Plenty of great shows all week round, including yours truly. Let's make moves. Speaking of making moves, we are in March, end of March, going toward the playoff season. We are also in the middle of March Madness, and so I thought let's take a little bit of a break. I'm going to have Josh back on here next week to break down some more great and not so great executives, do some more deep dives. Definitely looking forward to that. But in the meantime, between time, I figured, hey, this would be as good a time as any to go on Fanspo and do another Fun Trade Friday, Fun Trade Weekend, fun off-season weekend. I'm going to make a name for it soon. But this is where, go on Fanspo, fanspo.com. We look at the mock draft simulator. We look at the trade machine and cap manager, all the great resources that Fanspo has to offer. And we look at some things and just have some observations. Just a general conversation around that. So I'm looking at the mock draft simulator, mainly because this draft for me is so interesting. Right now, we are in the midst of it. A lot of the top number one seeds have been knocked out, but you've had great guys who are projected to be number one. Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith Jr., Paolo Banchero. Banchero is the only one still rocking as I record this on the 25th of March. That just shows you how quickly things have gone by the wayside for some of these guys. But this draft for me has been a very, very interesting one to look into. Mind you, I'm one of those folks who don't really go into the draft until just about this time, where you start to see how these players project into NBA. I'm not someone who considers myself a great scout, if you will. You know, I'm still a much to learn in terms of a talent evaluation from a college perspective. A lot of projecting and seeing where players will fit in at the next level. It's different for me, you know. But I have some thoughts on this draft, and my first is that it's a lot of meh. You know, it's mixed with some genuinely interesting prospects, but a lot of it for me are guys that I think will be good role players in the NBA. You know, a couple of intriguing wings, definitely some interesting bigs, but not someone I'm like, oh wow, you know, this team is going to just knock it out the park with this guy. You know, I don't see that personally, so that's what I find interesting. Again, that best player on a winning team, I don't see that player here at the moment. I see a lot of guys who could be the second best player. You know, Jabari Smith Jr., a high volume, shot maker from the perimeter. Paolo Banchero, a great secondary offensive initiator. Chet Holmgren, someone who defensively is definitely going to make an impact as a rim deterrent, can knock down a couple threes, do some intriguing things with the ball that I don't know will project into the NBA. We've seen a lot of guys with handle. I'm thinking of Thon Maker kind of the most, but other guys as well who, guess what, that handle didn't really come into play into the next level. So definitely am interested on that. Heavy on bigs. Draft is heavy on bigs. I think 3 of the top 5 guys are either a power forward or center. If you look at Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith Jr., and Paolo Banchero. And then you could add Adrian Griffin Jr., who's been kind of dabbled around the top 5 as a small forward as somebody else in there. After that, you got a couple of shooting guards, Jaden Ivey, Shaedon Sharpe. Both those guys shooting guards or combo guards. Johnny Davis has been in some as well. He's a shooting guard as well. So there you have those. And then a few guards. And again, we're not going to get a lot of point guards, really. I mean, Ty Washington probably toward the back half of the lottery. And then after that, I mean, good luck. You know what I mean? I don't really. There's a guy in Bryson McGowan who is an offensive initiator, but really more of a shooting guard than a point guard by a long stretch to me. I really do wish there was an Anthony Edwards or, I don't know, a Cade Cunningham or a Zion in this one, to be honest. There's the ice cream, man. A little early for that. Anyways, getting back to my thoughts here on this draft. Yeah, I really wish there was a guy like that who stood out that you're like, that's the guy you absolutely build around. Like, Chet Holmgren is sort of a unicorn in terms of what he can do at 7 feet tall. But also, I mean, Jabari Smith Jr. is a whole year younger. I like the way his game fits in a lot better. And Chet, to me, you know, he's someone who, yes, he can stroke the ball. three ball. Yes, he can handle the ball in the open court. I just don't know if that's going to translate well. Yes, defensively he is great. You know what I mean? Like in terms of an archetype. Like he's not a center except that he is a name, but like he is going to definitely impact that big man position. I just don't know if it's going to be someone I look at like, oh, absolutely going to be that guy that is. I'm looking for the word, just absolutely taking over. Like, is he going to be where Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic are? Way early to tell, but like, I'm going on a limb and saying no. That's me. Personally, I am high on Jabari Smith Jr., specifically for his plug-and-play ability. I think that he's someone that with his shooting and the way that he's able to do that, I mean, he has a great touch from mid-range and beyond. He can kind of beat his man off the dribble, not really, but he can just shoot over them with his, 6'11" frame. Like, he is a tall dude, I think he's going to be a great floor spacer in the next level, more of like a Rashard Lewis type player, and that guy had a very serviceable NBA career coming out of high school, if you remember, back in 1999. So, he bought out for a minute. If Jabari Smith can be anything close to that, like, that would be great, and I think Jabari can be better just because he is so young and has room to adapt and grow, and he's a lot better on the defensive side of the floor. And then lastly, my thoughts on this draft is that the first overall pick is really up in the air for me. If it's Chet, that makes sense. If it's Paolo Banchero, I see it. Moreover, he's a 6'9", just a brick house, He has legit wing skills, can kind of shoot from deep, much more comfortable in the mid-range. Very good passer. He's more like a Blake Griffin with some shades of Julius Randle, in my opinion, in terms of the way that he's able to handle the ball as a big. Not quite explosive on that end. I don't think Carmelo is a great add. Carmelo's just so smooth offensively, even in college, in that kind of small forward, power forward position. I don't quite see Paolo being that same level of player. But I do think that is very, very interesting. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now on my initial thoughts on this draft. But let's kind of go on to Fanspo, mess around here with a little bit of this draft sim, and see what we can come up with. Okay, so looking at the Fanspo mock draft simulator. Again, this is at fanspo.com under Tools, Draft, Mock Draft Simulator. It allows you to experience the excitement of the NBA draft night for yourself. You can go through what NBA front offices do on draft night, make player selections for your team or multiple teams. Just like with Fanspo's trade machine, you can share your creation with the world. We're not going to do that, maybe some other time, and then we can select the number of picks we'd like to choose. So we could do 14 for the lottery, 30 for the whole first round, or if we want to be brave, we could do a full 60. I'm not going to be brave. I'm just going to do the lottery. So we're going to do that. What team do I want to pick for? Let's do all of them. What draft order do I prefer the NBA? And then which draft board would I like to use? I go between ESPN and Fanspo, but I think I'm going to go ESPN start the draft. So the Houston Rockets have the first overall pick. Right now I'm looking at, again, Chet Holmgren, Jabari Smith Jr., Paolo Banchero, Jaden Ivey. Now, I'm really looking at those top three, right? If you look at the Rockets right now, you still got John Wall, right? It's just sitting there. You got Kevin Porter Jr. starting at point guard, even though I definitely think he's more of a small forward. You have Jalen Green at shooting guard. You have Alperen Sengun. Like, these are your building blocks, in my opinion. Christian Wood should be moved, but I'm looking at who fits well on this roster. And I like Alperen Sengun on the offense side of the ball. I like the fact that you are able to have a guy in Jalen Green who's going to be an explosive shot maker. And I don't know how I feel. I'm not personally behind Kevin Porter Jr. being a big part of this future of this team, but I do think it's interesting. So with this first overall pick, I'm looking for someone who's going to fit in, be primarily a secondary hub. And so in my mind, it's someone who's going to play off of Jalen Green, play off of Alperen Sengun. Can he be the best of those three? I love Jalen Green's upside, but I don't know. So I'm looking between primarily Chet for the defensive impact or Paolo Banchero offensively. And I just feel like Paolo's going to be a much better fit with Houston. But then I look at their big situation, and, I mean, it has to be Chet. It has to be Chet. I think that he's someone who is not going to be a super major offensive guy, so he's not going to be in the way of the development of a Sengun, of the development of a Jalen Green, but he's someone who can space the floor out. Defensive, he's going to help Houston's defense on a whole nother level in a way that, honestly, let's be real, they do not have at all right now. And then that makes Christian Wood expendable, which, I mean, in my opinion, he already is, but it's interesting. So that's my first pick. We're going to have Chet Holmgren going to the Houston Rockets. All right, Orlando Magic have the second overall pick. Orlando, one of the worst teams in the NBA, but they have some exciting prospects to be sure. Between Jalen Suggs, you look at Franz Wagner, who's had a tremendous year. You still got young guys like Cole Anthony. Let's not forget Markelle Fultz, who's returned and played well so far this season. R.J. Hampton. You have a question mark with Jonathan Isaac. He's missing his second straight complete season. And, he was never a great offensive player. So we're looking at that forward spot. They have a lot of young guards. I already mentioned Anthony. I already mentioned Markelle Fultz. I already mentioned Jalen Suggs. I already mentioned R.J. Hampton. But then if you look at the forwards positions, you're really looking at Franz Wagner and Chuma Okeke. Chuma Okeke, I think, is more of a power forward, but I definitely can see him being someone off the bench. Franz Wagner probably got the 3 spot locked up. So I'm going to take someone who can play off of him. Doesn't need the ball, but is definitely going to be a very high value kind of release valve on the pick and roll, pick and pop with these guards, someone who can knock down the mid-range and 3-ball at a high rate. We're going to go with Jabari Smith Jr. to Orlando. I think that is a match made in heaven. He does bring that length and that wingspan on the defensive end to make Orlando, especially their front office, happy because they are big on that length and wingspan. But you also have someone who offensively is going to be able to soak up some offensive usage without demanding it. And I think that's going to be great for a team that still has Jalen Suggs figuring his way out, still has Markelle Fultz in the mix, and some guys like Cole Anthony who are not afraid of shooting the ball. So definitely like Jabari Smith Jr. going to Orlando. Third pick. Looking at the Detroit Pistons. Main guys, come on, it's Cade Cunningham, right? To a lesser extent, you got Sadiq Bey, who had a 50-point game just a couple weeks ago. You look at Killian Hayes, who is still trying to find his way. Marvin Bagley, if the Pistons bring him back, still a young big. So you need a guy to kind of fit in alongside that. You have Jeremy Grant, who could be on his way out. It really depends. I want someone who's going to form a great tandem with Cade Cunningham, who's going to be a part of this team moving forward. Someone who, again, can create a little bit of offense on his own. A growing defender, but a great passer. I'm going Paolo Banchero. I think that's an easy pick for the Pistons. I like the way we're going to see some big, oversized playmaking and shot creation from Cade Cunningham and Paolo Banchero. So we're going to roll with him. All right, so OKC has the fourth pick. I know they probably want to go a little high with all their picks, but this is where they are. You look at their situation in the backcourt, their young pieces, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Josh Giddey are locks. Luguentz Dort has been a very solid player on a very team-friendly contract. Alexei Pokashevsky's in there as a young guy. Darius Bazley as well. But their forward spot is still a position need, in my opinion. Their big spot is wide open. But I'm looking at a forward. I like having someone who I think can be alongside Giddey and Gilgeous-Alexander. Someone who can make shots, space the floor. I don't think you need another guard. You can bring a big in for sure, but I think we're just going to go maybe a little early with this fourth pick, but I just think it's a good fit, and someone's going to mesh well with this young roster, kind of form a great core with Giddey and Gilgeous-Alexander and not necessarily clash with the two. I'm going to go with A.J. Griffin out of Duke. I'm going to take A.J. Griffin. I think that he is a great match on this roster. 6'6", 222 pounds. On ESPN, he's 8th, but on Fanspo, he's been 5th. So me taking him where I have, I don't think is the worst. We're just one pick earlier at 4th. Now we go to Indiana. Indiana, man, in the middle of a rebuild project. I'm looking at pieces that are a part of their core. Tyrese Halliburton, mid-season acquisition, easy. Chris Duarte, a little older, but I put him in there. Isaiah Jackson, nice guy as well. You still have Miles Turner, 25, but still. So I still see a need in the backcourt. Chris Duarte's been great. Buddy Hield, I don't know if Indiana's going to keep him moving forward. But I look at a guy like a Jaden Ivey, and I see a guy in 6'4", blazing fast, 17 points per game, 3 assists, 4 rebounds, more of a combo guy. I think you have him and Tyrese Halliburton. You have two guys who can play on ball, play off the ball. Jaden Smith is still working on his shot, but definitely improved tremendously in that area. I like that fit. I think you have an electrifying backcourt already. And you still have guys, like I said, in Isaiah Jackson and Miles Turner that are bigs that I think will work well together. So we're going to go with Jaden Ivey, 5th overall, going to the Indiana Pacers. Sacramento Kings, man, with the 6th pick, they need a lot. Which is weird because they actually have serviceable players up and down their roster. Whether it's De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis. Davion Mitchell's had a decent rookie season. You still have Harrison Barnes around, Rashawn Holmes. is in the area. Like, they have good pieces, but, I'm looking at that two-guard spot. Terrence Davis is mandate. Dante DiVincenzo is a part of that. Justin Holiday as well. But I want someone who's going to really solidify that. Davion Mitchell is really more of a backup point guard than a two-guard. We're going to go with Johnny Davis Jr. out of Wisconsin, averaging 19 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists. Good shot creator, someone who can play off ball, take up some on-ball uses as well. Johnny Davis with some additional height alongside De'Aaron Fox. I think will be a great style of play, a great fit for their style of play, rather. I'm going to take Johnny Davis over there. Looking at the Portland Trailblazers, this is interesting. Because right now, I'm not a big fan of where the Blazers are, personally. Like, in their rebuild, or not rebuild, retooling. Right now, you have Dame Lillard, you have Josh Hart, you have Anthony Simons, who they're definitely going to bring back. Keon Johnson was a big part of their trade acquisition during the mid-season trade deadline. And after that, a whole bunch of players, that I don't know how they key in long-term. Not super high on that. But one thing I do see is Jusuf Nurkic is going to be a free agent. I don't know if you spend money to bring him back, but if you don't exactly have money there to use to bring someone in to replace him. So I say you draft that guy. I love the athleticism and defensive impact of Jalen Duren out of Memphis. It'll be 19. 12 points, 8 rebounds, still growing, but it already flashed some dominance around the basket athletically. Love the tease of a mid-range jumper that he's given. The fact that he might potentially stretch out to 3. Can't dribble to save his life, but he's someone who has been a nice passer out the short roll, high-low actions, really good there. I'm going to go Ramble. I think Jalen Duren is the pick there. So Jalen Duren going definitely higher, but he's going to go 7th to the Portland Trailblazers. All right, so thinking about the Spurs, which is always interesting. So recently, it seems the Spurs have kind of prioritized upside in their draft picks. You've had a mix of guys who kind of fit right in perfectly, as well as guys who, flash some upside that might become something with the Spurs, whether or not that expectation was realized or not. You saw Lonnie Walker. Again, mixed results there. Chimezie Metu was a second rounder, but again, the potential being there. Keldon Johnson in 2019. We've seen a little bit more from him. Devin Vassell 2 years ago, and he's becoming a very fine 3-and-D guy. Josh Primo this past year as well. So looking at these kind of forward, younger guys, I think for the Spurs, at the position, that they're in, I think it behooves them to draft Benedict Mathurin from Arizona, who just got eliminated. That sucked in the NCAA tournament. But he's averaging 17 points a game, 5 rebounds, 2 assists in college. Good three-point shooter, nice athleticism, good competitive fire. You love to see that from your guys like that. And I think he's a great fit alongside, not only Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell in the wings, but of course when you have just I want to say a great young group all around. And mind you, I'm not saying that all the Spurs are young. Like, for example, I think DeJounte Murray is just approaching his prime. But you got some younger guys that he can kind of join the core of. He's probably more on the Josh Primo timeline. But still, untapped potential, kind of got the game kind of late. And comes with a certain defined skill set from the jump that can only further be defined. So definitely a big fan of that. All right. Looking at the Washington Wizards, and boy, they need help at the point guard spot. That's been a thing. They've gone through a musical chair sort of lineup there over the last couple of years. First with John Wall, then with Russell Westbrook, then Spencer Dinwiddie, and now, it's kind of a point guard by committee type play, especially with Bradley Beal being out for the year. So I say, hey, listen, the Wizards have tried trade after trade to get a point guard. Let's just draft one. Let's go from that. See how it is, and I'm looking at Ty Washington from Kentucky. Smooth player, real fast, nice mid-range shooter, still learning to stretch it out to 3, but basically 12, 4, and 4 in college. I think he's a nice fit alongside Bradley Beal. He can play on the ball, a little bit off the ball, but enough to run the show while also being able to defer to Bradley Beal, which is obviously what he wants. And, you already have other positions pretty filled. You have Rui Hachimura, Kyle Kuzma, Denny Avdija, Corey Kispert. Those are all in that kind of forward range. Contavious Caldwell-Pope is there. Kristaps Porzingis, Daniel Gafford. They have the big spot. You have Vernon Carey Jr. The one spot that has a clear opening is point guard. Right now it's Cassius Winston and Ish Smith. That's not going to do it. So I'm going to go with Ty Washington. I think that's a good fit there, and we'll see kind of how that works. Now we look at the Pelicans. They have the 10th pick in the draft, right? Via the Lakers 2022 first-round pick in this mock draft. They also have the 48th to go in from Cleveland and the 53rd from Washington. But right now, you look at this team, Zion Williamson out for the year. But you have an interesting little backcourt spot, backcourt tandem, or let's say backcourt piece in CJ McCollum, playing more of the lead guard role after being, for a shooting guard for a decade plus, more in that combo guard spot. You have Devontae Graham. Jose Alvarado's been a revelation as a two-way player. Brandon Ingram has been solid. Trey Murphy's been coming on as of late. Jonas Valanciunas and Jackson Hayes have had the big man position pretty lined up. You also have Larry Nance Jr. and Herbert Jones as well. Herbert Jones definitely should be on some all-rookie team. So I'm looking at this team like, you know what? The Pelicans have had a problem acquiring very good guards, but another position of need has been that kind of forward spot. But then I say to myself, you know what? Yeah, potential here at a shooting guard. Didn't play in college. Committed to Kentucky. Not sure if he goes there or not, but he's definitely someone who is probably going to be taken a little bit earlier than where he is here, because we don't know what he looks like, but the untapped potential is there. It looks interesting. I'm talking about Shaedon Sharpe. Again, he committed to Kentucky, but is eligible for the draft. I'm just going to say, listen, you don't walk away from guaranteed money like that if you have the potential to be drafted as high as you are here. I'm going to assume that Shaedon Sharpe brings his athleticism, his untapped potential to the New Orleans Pelicans. I am drafting him here. He is with the 10th pick. So back with the Blazers. They have the 11th pick. They already have Jalen Duren with the 7th pick. I'm looking at them taking another player, another forward type. I'm looking at Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray is a solid player. 6'8", 6'11" wingspan, average 23 points, 8 rebounds. Good shooter, can create some offense. I like his fit there. Again, there's a guy that can grow with this team, but also help in a win-now capacity. I definitely think Keegan Murray goes there. Right, the Knicks have the 12th pick. Knicks, man, I mean, it's been a disappointing year for sure. Julius Randle has been up and down. You have injuries to Derrick Rose for most of the year. Kemba Walker, what a sad, strange experiment that was. Young guys kind of waiting in the wings, and Cam Reddish, Obi Toppin, and Marion Quickly's gotten more run. I'm going to add another guy, another point guard, if you will, ball handler, 6'6", intriguing skill set. From the G League Ignite team, I'm going with Dyson Daniels. I like his potential fit there. He really showed out. Yes, it was more of an exhibition, but NBA All-Star Weekend, both in the rookie game as well as in the skills challenge, really like what he brought to the table there. So I'm going to go and grab him. Right, Atlanta Hawks, another team, very interesting spot right now. Again, disappointing more on the next level. Injuries have been sort of that. Defense has been an issue as well. But they have a lot of their group locked in. You have Trae Young, John Collins, potentially on the trading block, but he's there. Gallinari's still around, at least for now. Clint Capella, Bogdan Bogdanovic. I'm looking at position of need, and I'm looking at Gallinari. He'll come off the books. I see Jeremy Sochan from Baylor, 6'10", intriguing guy, a little bit of everything, freshman, young dude. I think that he can help with this team. If I wasn't looking at like a forward position, I'd probably be looking at guard just for backup. Because just Trae Young, Sharif Cooper's not doing it. You kind of had point guard by committee when Trae Young's been there, and boy, have they played like it. So I would swing for Kennedy Chandler in that instance as well, the 6'1" guard from Tennessee. But I'm going to go with Jeremy Sochan for now. I think the fit there is solid. So we'll look at that. All right. So with the last pick in this lottery, with the 14th pick in the 2022 NBA draft, the Charlotte Hornets are going to go with the backup guard. LaMelo Ball's been great. You have James Bouknight as a young shooting guard, but you don't really have a lot of depth there. Terry Rozier is a solid shooting guard as well, but I want a guard who can push the pace, who's going to be solid. I'm looking at Kennedy Chandler. I like what I see from him from Tennessee. I think it's going to be a great fit. Rafael Barlow of NBA Draft Junkies did a really good video on him, kind of scouting his freshman adjustment, and I think it's one that you should take a look at. But I'm going to draft Kennedy Chandler with the 14th pick here to close out the mock draft on Fanspo. So, going back from the beginning, Chet Holmgren went number 1 to the Houston Rockets. Jabari Smith Jr. went 2nd to the Orlando Magic. Paolo Banchero went 3rd to the Detroit Pistons. AJ Griffin is joining Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Josh Giddey with the Oklahoma City Thunder, while Jaden Ivey is taking his talents to Indiana alongside Tyrese Halliburton. Johnny Davis is going to go to the Sacramento Kings 6 overall, while Jalen Durant is going a little bit higher than most have him in mocks, 7th overall to the Portland Trailblazers. Benedict Mathurin is going to slide right in with the Spurs at the 8th pick, while TyTy Washington will hopefully man the point guard spot that has been quite a carousel for the Washington Wizards at 9. Shaedon Sharpe, we're taking a leap of faith with him at 10 to the New Orleans Pelicans, while Keegan Murray is going to go to Portland as well to kind of help with this soft rebuild slash retool they got going on. Dyson Daniels is going to be more of an initiator for the New York Knicks at 12, while Jeremy Sochan is going 13th to the Atlanta Hawks. And last but not least, we have Kennedy Chandler going 14th overall to the Charlotte Hornets. So this is where I have them saved here. I do like this initial draft. It's very rough. It's my first one here. We'll do a few more here on Let's Make Moves as we get closer and closer to that date. But I wanted to kind of talk about the draft a little bit, give my initial thoughts, do a little bit of a rough draft, kind of mock draft here. Like to examine some of the fit, examine some of the need off the top of the dome here. Hopefully get some draft guys on and continue to explore this in greater detail as we get closer to the draft. But definitely appreciate y'all sticking with me here on Let's Make Moves. I do appreciate y'all. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Corbin NBA, CORBAN NBA. I appreciate y'all. Make sure to check out The Lead on Twitter at The Lead SM online, theleadsm.com. Pretty simple, quite effective, great content on there. Definitely make sure to look into that. Also, if you follow my work, I really would appreciate some love on my podcast, Roundball Ramble, part of the Sports Ethos Podcast Network. So check that out wherever you find podcast, Roundball Ramble. We ramble about the roundball. That's just what it is. So definitely do that as well. Appreciate y'all. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming next week with Josh Earl going into an executive deep dive of one Joe Dumars. But until next time, y'all, appreciate y'all. Have a great weekend and continue to make those moves. This has been a Sports Ethos presentation.